Guys, thanks for taking some time out of your day. We're kind of winding down the crop year here, and just wanted to touch base with you guys on farm grade products generally, but really kind of just talk a little bit about Nitros and how you're using it, how it came about, and just for kind of background, someone will ask me what Nitros is, and we've been using Nitros probably going on 15 to maybe even 20 years in its early developmental stages, but it's really kind of taken the front of stage in the last, I'd say, 3 years, as being something that we weren't only just looking at the organic market for it, where it made itself available in the conventional market and started showing some positive ROIs there. If I have to describe Nitros, like what's my elevator pitch on Nitros, Nitros is a consortium of known beneficial microbes mixed in with some food sources, humic acids, fulvic acids, some carbon. That really what we're trying to do is to harness those strains of bacteria. Mother Nature developed them. They've evolved over millions of years to pull the nitrogen out of the air. The air that we're breathing right now is 80% nitrogen on average, and put it into a plant available form. Nitrogen being one of the principal inputs from a farm perspective, whether you're doing corn or whether you're doing hay, not so much on hay, but potatoes, everything's got a nitrogen budget, right? And so what Nitros can do is provide a secondary source, pulling it out of the air, that doesn't count against you on environmental quotients, things like that, because it's just natural bacteria that's pulling that out. And that comes with some real great benefits, not only for the nitrogen levels, but you also get all the good guys holding the bad guys in check. You get accelerated breakdown of compost or manure that might be in the field and things like that. So gives us a little bit of a background for whatever 5 people that listen to this might have on what we're doing with Nitro. So anyway, you guys in the Idaho Falls office sold more Nitros than any other place that we do business all across our whole system. And I think that as I've had conversations with all of you, the things that you've seen and the reasons that you sell it might be a little bit different. So I'd love to get your guys' take on Nitros in general, farm grade in general, what your history is with us, and what you think of this Nitros product that we've been pushing out there. Maybe start with you, Gary.
All right. I've been in this industry a long time, as my face shows. A few wrinkles and a lot of lost hair.
We're all catching up.
Okay, yeah. Well,
not me.
I'm not you. That's fine.
You're staying ahead of it.
Yeah. That's why we're all senior crop advisors. We're just crop advisors.
Clean living.
That's right. But I really appreciate Farm Grade, because I think that they've kind of set the standard in our areas. Back in the 70s and the 80s, if we talked anything biological, that more or less we lost our credibility to the grower, because they were throwing out so many things out there that were just absolutely junk. I mean, remember Cornell, they did a study, it's been 35, 40 years ago, where they took probably 100 of the so-called the biological products in the market, and they all touted or promoted that they had live biology, mm-hmm. and that they could propagate more biology by using their products. And I think out of that test, out of over 100, I think only 1 or 2 of them were even viable.
Oh, really?
That's how we started out in the biological world. And I think that Farm Grade, when you guys came on the market, I think you stole the market. You actually brought credibility back to the biological arena in agriculture. And I think for that, I've been very grateful for. And I've been involved with Farm Grade for about 8 or 9 years now. And I think that you've got great products. I'm grateful for the products that we've been able to use. And I guess, are we talking mainly about Nitros right now?
Yeah, we can talk about any of them, but maybe Nitros is, we're kind of winding up the crop year here.
One of the biggest challenges I've seen in the organic arena for farming is trying to find a nitrogen source. I think that and weed control are probably the two biggest hurdles that organic farmers face. And I had some growers here a few years ago that decided to try to grow some biological or organic small grains. And we started, and that was my very first introduction to Nitrous. And of course, being the conscientious crop advisor I am, I said, man, how are we gonna make this work? Because, you know, we're used to 100 plus, 120 plus bushel small grain, and you're gonna put organic wheat in the ground. How on earth are we gonna fertilize this? And that's when we talked to Pharmgrade, and they said, we've got this product. I don't think it was called Nitrous then. What was it called?
It's been through a few iterations of names.
We decided to use it, and all of a sudden we've got this organic wheat crop that looks and is as vigorous as his commercial grain that's had all kinds of nitrogen put on it. And he ended up getting, 100 plus bushels off of organic wheat, which was just unheard of. And as the years gone by, I'm sure you've done some tweaking with this product.
Yes.
And it's gotten even better. And I tell you, it's something special. So I don't know if you guys want to chime in here, but I can just keep on going.
I think let's just kind of go around the room and just see how you guys are using it, because I think you guys do a little bit different. We've talked about your small grain. Come back to you because I want to touch on salts in a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Because in our western soils, that's such a challenge. But Kelly, yours has been a little bit different. You've been in spud crop with it for quite a bit. Maybe even you've walked some of the acres that we did have just Nitrous on back with Larson Farms. But then down into Texas on the organic corn. Give us an idea of what you've seen with it.
Oh, you bet. No, so some of my history with Pharmgrade started not necessarily as competitors, but with them doing some trials on my growers' farms. And it was about the same year we kind of partnered with them as Valley. And, they came and gave their spiel, and I was as skeptical as anybody, just going, making up terms, making up words, making up stuff. And, I left their meeting knowing they had done these, pretty large scale trials on my biggest grower at the time. And so I called the manager of that farm and said, hey, do you have data on this? These guys said they went through all this stuff and it looked good, but they had no data. And he's like, I'm sitting at my desk, and he pulled it all right up, and we went over the data, and it was very good data. Comparing, the challenge was they gave us their hardest field. They went and put their products on it, brought it to farm average. All the fields around they tried it on was like a 20 sack yield increase compared to a check and a trial like that. And so, the information came from the other side. And Tyler's heard me say the story a few times. Not long after that, I went to the Tulare Ag Show, and there's this booth of 10,000 people pushing biology. And as I kind of went through and listened to their pitch and, kind of still had, I think it was when Tyler first came back to Pharmgrade. So it was mostly Tyler and his dad, Kelly, talking. I kind of listened to their pitch and theirs, and you're kind of going, okay, there is some industry standard. There is a few things, but as Kelly for sure went over his mistakes as far as this is what I've tried and this is what I didn't like, and here's how we've come up with products. It really matched, well, probably contradicted what those guys were selling a little bit, and you could see probably why they struggled versus were successful. And when it's let's go 16 ounces of a product with one strain versus let's go 5 gallons of a product with 25 or 30 strains, that's really when Pharmgrade started making sense to me more and more. I thought they were 10 years ahead of their competition, if not more. And then the feedback from growers, there's another large grower I worked with that was, hey, let's look at a chemical alternative for this problem. And he goes, nope, we're going to fly 3 gallons of PLC or whatever your very the initial one that hit our market was. And you thought, man, that's kind of crazy. But the guy goes, I don't need chemical. I need some plant health, some soil health. I need some biology in my soil. And so there's a couple of feedback from growers that we worked with that really pushed it into, let's try it. And it just kind of went from there. And I think the biggest feedback from products are, do people continue to use them? You go try it once and it disappears. Well, and then another person tries it and it disappears in another one. That's not, to me, that's a sign of, hey, this might not be a successful product. But when there's return business and continuing business, Tyler mentioned some organic corn we worked with where we said, hey, try this. Here's the organic label. we'll give it a try. And I think we sent them 30,000 gallons or something like that. And not a lot of feedback. It's out of state. And all of a sudden that winter, they start talking to wanting to buy 250,000 gallons of Nitrous to go on that corn. We started following through on that. It was like 220 bushel yield on 30 or 3,000 acres. We're comfortable. We want to run with it on organic corn. And so, it really did open your eyes of like, holy smokes, here we go. To evolve into the Nitrous on potatoes, was it probably 3-4 years ago? The price of nitrogen got pretty high. We were looking at any alternative we could just to help soften the blow of nitrogen prices. And so we were in a pretty sandy field north of here, sandy farm area, and we started plugging some Nitrous onto that farm, and everywhere we did it, the plant stayed alive longer. The disease pressure was less, and the late season health on those potatoes really sold it to where all of a sudden the next year we did it again, same process. The next year we did it again, same process, to where this year it was every acre, beautiful vines, late season health. And I've taken that to other places and seen the same result repeatedly over and over, to where we get that Nitrous on. We're seeing late season health and late season bulking. It's kind of been a pretty neat thing to watch.
Yeah.
And Kelly, you do a really good job with the satellite data. Tell us a little bit about that and how the Nitrous appears in that.
Just one of our programs we offer through Ag World is what it is, but they'll do updated NDVI pictures every so often. And so you can just track the health looking at it. We also get the, kind of a vegetative index taken from satellites that show those. And you can just see the, like the one year we had like 7 pivots mixed in with about 10 or 14 that were total. And you could pick out every pivot that was treated with Nitrous in late August because they were greener than the ones that weren't. It's very easy to say, these are the ones that had Nitrous put on them, these are the ones that were not. I've seen that at Norcotas, Burbanks, even up till this year, heavy soil, sandy soil. Typically you can pick out, I'm not saying it's 100% success rate, but it's a 90% success rate where I've seen that. You can pick out the pivot we've treated with it. It's really helped with that late season health on potatoes.
Definitely late season. That seems to keep coming to the top on the Nitrous, and that was very evident in your GPS
when
stuff.
Your plants are bulking and late in the year, and they don't just when they start to go down, if you can slow that descent, that can add a lot of sacks in a hurry.
Yeah, that's when that hormone is tripped and it's not vegetative anymore. Every ounce of solar power is going in to bulk up those potatoes. And so that late, it's funny because a lot of times guys will be like, oh, it looks okay. And then August 1st, August 8th starts coming around. They're like, oh, they're still alive. Yeah. That's a good sign.
And that's been a little bit of, okay, if 1 gallon equals 10 units of nitrogen, we put it on. Well, in my mind, it's not like we put it on today, you see it today. You put it on today, you're going to see it as that season goes on, as you taper off your pumping.
Yeah.
It's going to show up in my experience with that late season bulking and plant health when you're really done pumping.
I would even go as far to say that the plant will take the easiest nitrogen at the time, which usually is synthetic. And then as that peters out, or you get a wave in what the plant can pull up, it'll start drawing from other available nitrogen, in this case, Nitrous. And I think that's why we see it late in season, because that becomes an issue late in season.
This year, feedback on we tried it on a pivot. First time this guy's used Nitrous. It was on some Burbanks, had some, Burbanks are typically rough. That's just how they are. His feedback was the field we'd put Nitrous on stayed alive longer and was smoother. And he thought, your peaks and valleys of the synthetic nitrogens, you're pumping your UAN or whatever you're getting from that. He thought maybe that Nitrous kind of kept that more of a consistent release that equated to smoother potatoes. That was his feedback, just trying to process what he saw without seeing the product before. And that would kind of make sense, is if you kind of have your ups and your downs, and as though the water runs through, or, then maybe you're pumping once a week, maybe you're pumping every time it goes by, but you do have some peaks and valleys there, and having the Nitrous there, that's just a continual release of that, it's a theory.
Maybe those valleys are not as deep.
Correct.
And that's kind of a nitrogen insurance type play.
Yeah, that was feedback from a first-time user this year, and it turned into where, a couple pivots to dominate, going to try some more Nitrous next year. So it does evolve to more and more gallons.
Yeah. McKay, I would classify, and I'm going to take personal responsibility for this because of our, diametrically opposed. McKay and I went to rival high schools in central Utah, and he's the only Delta rabbit that I've actually ever cultivated a relationship with,
Or tried
business
to.
or otherwise. Yes, yes. We will say it that way. But all joking aside, one thing that I've really admired about all three of you, and McKay fits into this too, is that you guys aren't what I would say an easy sell on these products, right? This is not something that you're just like, oh, this is a great product and I'm going to go push it out to every single one of my guys. This is hard fought through trial work, a couple of pivots here, a couple of pivots there. Just walk us through kind of your evolution of what you've done with the products and what you see. How do you sell it to your customers?
For me, kind of Nitrous started with alfalfa. I mean, as we talked earlier, alfalfa generally doesn't need nitrogen.
Yeah.
However, I think with the yields we're pulling off, it's not fixing the amount of nitrogen it needs, specifically like second crop.
Yeah.
I think it's just so hot and it's growing so fast, it can't produce that much nitrogen and keep up. So I have one grower that alfalfa is not his cash crop, right? It's for the cows and it'll survive on its own. Not much fertilizer,
Right.
not much nutrition goes in there. However, I got him to start doing some foliar with bug spray and threw Nitrous in there, and his yield, especially on second crop, just went crazy up, you know? And so I think that's we're playing in there, but also I think there's a lot more than just nutrition. There's a lot of non-nutrient benefits from Nitrous and all the other biologicals too. I think of it, you know, a lot of times with other products, like for example, like a herbicide, you know, you always have selective herbicides. They're targeting one specific thing. With biology, you have a whole bunch of different strains of a whole bunch of different stuff, and they're all targeting different things.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a lot more non-nutrient benefits than we realize, and we're getting a lot of bang out of those as well. So my first experience was in alfalfa, then started moving into the potatoes. I think what you guys talked about earlier, the leveling out of the petioles in the nitrate helps. You don't really see, I mean, that was one thing that I was pretty nervous about, was going all Nitrous. Are you going to see your petioles tank on the nitrate?
Right. Because it's not nitrate that they're
Right.
fixing. It's ammonia. It's ammoniacal nitrogen.
Right.
How's that for technicality, right?
Good job, dude.
Thank you.
Way to go.
Yeah. Didn't even have to edit that
You go
one.
over the conversion of that, like the
I did take organic chemistry, but it was my worst grade ever. So
And a long time ago.
Yeah.
in the 90s.
it was in the 90s. Thank you.
Back in the 1900s.
So no, I think we are seeing that it's kind of leveling things out. I put it in a lot of my summer run blends with the 32, cut back a little on the 32 and put that in, and I think it's helping level things out. I think it's helping with disease pressure. I mean, it's helping with a lot of things. Pretty exciting.
You know, when I'm talking to new distributors, or we're trying to bring on new customers and things like that, a lot of times they'll really try to pin me down on, you know, what is the mechanism by which this is getting us the effects? And the truth of the matter is, it depends on the year. And I think that that's where the farm grade approach to things, where we're not just going out with one specific bug with known nitrogen fixing behavior, right? We've got a whole cocktail of different stuff, because one of the biggest black eyes that I hear in the biologicals industry, even though that's like the white hot part of our industry, right, is win rates over time. So how many times, you know, if you put it on, is it winning 75% of the time in the field? You'll hear products that are sold by very big companies that will come in. You talk to their growers and they'll say, man, in 2014, that stuff really popped. Like I could see it to the line.
2014.
You know?
Yeah.
But in 2015, man, I don't think it did anything. And if you think about it, our our approach, with it being kind of the shotgun approach with 25 different bugs in there, let's say that one spring's really dry, we don't have enough water, you're going to have different bugs that are doing different things in the soil and in the plant that are going to help there versus a really wet year where other bugs are going to carry the water. And so that shotgun approach throws a much wider net to where grower doesn't care exactly how it works, just that it does work, because it comes down to, do they get ROI on their investment, right? Are they making a return? And that's where you get to repeat business. Like anyone, we've got good guys that want to be progressive, and they'll try anything, at least a strip of it once, but it's really the repeat business that's been kind of our hallmark of how we've tried to build this up and go through that. And and some soils might be different than others, like the way that we're treating corn in the Midwest, where they have this really black rich soil, and then they have this stuff that falls from the sky called rain out there. When we treated those soils with our Western protocols, it didn't look the same. So what we found there is, like, putting it in with the Roundup and treating the plants, or in with the fungicide, is where we got our big bang for the buck. Whereas maybe here, our soils are higher pH, they've got different limitations to them, where we can really move the needle by moving the soil. In the Midwest, where they've got soil and not dirt, you gotta treat plants. Gary, you've been kind of on the cutting edge of a couple of things, but let's talk about salts in our soils and how you think these products can help there.
Yeah, that's been a big problem in the high calcareous soils. We typically fight soluble salts, high sodium. And it's, in fact, in some of the fields I work with, that's probably our number one issue is fighting the salts. So here we are in a world that we're throwing literally tons of fertilizer over the years on these soils. All of the synthetic commercial fertilizer that we use is salt.
Yeah.
And we've done all kinds of things to try to minimize the effect of that. And there obviously are some forms of synthetic fertilizers, and that's our business. And I don't think we're ever going to get away from that, but it still has a negative effect. And so I've got several growers with this problem. And so when you think about Nitrous, and I think it may not be entirely scientifically correct to use this, but I think a term that we've used, you and I have, is a non-symbiotic nitrogen fixing product, which means we have the ability to utilize the organic portion of nitrogen in our soils, which all soils are. And by so doing that and taking that route, we really minimize the amount of salt that we typically end up bombarding these plants with during the summer, particularly in potatoes, where we're almost constantly pumping products like Solution 32, Thiazole, 1034, 1137, you name it, which are all quite salty.
Salt. Yeah.
And so when we started doing that, all of a sudden we saw something different. Areas in those fields that were typical, higher than the average part of the field, they did not exhibit the typical salty situations. I don't know if the average person probably doesn't understand how water gets into the plant, but it's through the process of osmosis from a lower salt concentration to a higher salt concentration. So if you've got higher salt levels in your soils, all of a sudden you have drought or salt-induced drought.
Yeah.
And the plants just cannot survive in that. I've been in potato fields in Arizona particularly that you walk out in the field is muddy. You're just tramping through it, and all of a sudden you see these areas in the field where the plants look like they're dehydrated, and they truly are because the salt levels are so high. And so the Nitrous gives us a really tangible way of maybe reducing some of the amounts of salty fertilizer, particularly nitrogen, and it helps in that situation. So I think the Nitrous it's been heaven sent as far as I'm concerned when it comes to dealing with these problematic fields. And salt has no place in high production agriculture. That's all there is to it.
Yeah.
Well, and I would think too, with the nitros, you're getting the nitrogen that's salt free, but you're also getting some stress mitigation in the plant to help buffer those salts from a plant standpoint. It's more than just the nitrogen, as there is, we talk about the overall plant health. I think that the other portion of the nitros helps that plant. It reduces the stress from the salts, and the plant's able to grow through it as well. Was that about 3 years ago when we had hot and dry and problems? And as we kind of sat in the office and went through wins and losses that year, it seemed like any place we had products that helped with the stress, which a lot of them turned into be farm grades products. There was some other stuff we did there too, but it seemed like where we had a strong farm grade presence, our yields were fine, and where we didn't, we had struggles. And I think, Gary, you said some of that was just across the road from each other, one program to the next.
It is, and the year that you're alluding to, our overall quality in the Idaho potato production was really poor. I mean, we had 90 to 100 degree temperatures during tuber initiation, which is almost unheard of around here. And we struggled, and we struggled a lot because the plants had no way of defending themselves. Where we had a strong biological presence in those fields, it seemed to mitigate it. Now, was it 100%? No, it never is. And you talk about win rate, but I would say that, I'll go out on a limb and say with Nitrous, I think your win rate's up in that 80 percentile. I really do, which is phenomenal when you talk about biologicals.
Yeah, I think I've told you that more and more. You start hearing on some of these biologicals, we have a 70% win ratio. I think you're going to see that more and more of people using 70%. That's kind of if you're over that, it must be good, and under that, obviously it's bad.
Yeah.
But, you think batting 350 is going to get you in the Hall of Fame, but
yeah. Speaking of consistency, and just a quick story here, it wasn't that long ago, Tyler and I went to a meeting in front of a bunch of growers, and there was 2 other bacteria companies there, biological companies, and the question came from the crowd, do you have any third-party data? And I was shocked that one by one they said, no, we don't. No, we don't. But Tyler was able to say, yeah, we do. And Gary, you talked about earlier about farm grade being 10 years ahead, and I really believe that is true.